Now let me tell you something, Cultamaniacs. Hulk Hogan didn't become Hulk Hogan just by saying his prayers and eating his vitamins, dude. You see, the Hulkster got to the top of the wrestling mountain based on his marketability, charisma, ability to sell and show emotion, and his enviable winning record. Jack? Rarely tasting defeat inside the squared circle, Hogan only lost to people when he felt like it made sense from a business perspective, or, would ultimately benefit him in some form or fashion. Consequently, there were a few stars that Hogan wouldn't lie down for, even when sometimes that was the plan all along. And I mean, really, what are you gonna do, brother, when the Hulkster doesn't want to do the honors for you? I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 times Hulk Hogan refused to do the job. Brother!
But first, when you need the best possible protection, who do you turn to? Brock Lesnar? Brock Lesnar? Haku? Haku? Maybe get Bradshaw and Farouk out of retirement. AP? Nay! Don't be daft. If you want the best possible protection out there, then your choice should be none other than NordVPN. Cheers to Nord for sponsoring this video. We at Cultaholic truly believe that Nord is the best service of its kind. So here is how I use Nord. Obviously, I live in the United Kingdom, but with NordVPN, I can set myself to be anywhere in the world virtually and access content from those regions. So this means if I fancied it, I could set myself to be somewhere else in the world virtually and sign up for a certain sports entertainment network for a fraction of the price. Or if I happen to live in the United States, I could sign up for that sports entertainment network, even though it doesn't properly exist as it did in the United States before. So you can get all of the premium live events, the weekly shows, the historical stuff, all of that for a fraction of the price. Oh, and it works for plenty of other on-demand services too. Wink. On top of that, it protects against password attacks, phishing, ransomware, malware, and loads more. It is seriously an investment worth making, and one that, if you're smart about it, will pay for itself and more. Oh, and there's even a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if Nord isn't for you, you can get your money back, no bother at all. You can grab our exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/cultaholic. There is a link in the description below to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months for free. Can't say fairer than that. Enjoy the video.
Number 10, Ric Flair. The match that should by rights have headlined WrestleMania 8 didn't get its due on pay-per-view until 1994. Ric Flair was Hulk Hogan's first WCW opponent after the Hulkster's much-hyped signing that summer. Squaring off at Bash at the Beach, Hogan defeated Flair in his debut to bag the WCW title. Business as usual. According to the original plan, the Nature Boy was supposed to regain the title in the rematch, setting up a third and final bout that would, of course, be won by Hogan. Instead of an actual victory, Ric could only defeat Hulk by countout at Clash of the Champions the next month before taking an L in the trilogy-concluding steel cage retirement match at Halloween Havoc. Hogan apparently didn't believe WCW fans were ready to see him lose, much less drop the title so soon in his run, and used the old creative control card to put the kibosh on the proposal. Hulk would only drop the title at Halloween Havoc 1995 to the Giants, and even then it was by disqualification, and the result was pretty much declared void a week later anyway. Number 9, Randy Savage. Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan squared off hundreds of times in matches on pay-per-view, television, and on non-televised live events over a 15-year period. You would think that, after so many in-ring meetings, the Macho Man would have at least one pinfall victory over his rival-cum-partner-cum-rival. Well, you would think wrong, because outside of some DQ and count-out victories, Savage failed to ever score a 1-2-3 on the Hulkster. How is that possible? Is it that across many years and 2 companies, nobody saw the business sense in having Randy win at least one single solitary match, even via nefarious means, to build interest in a rematch down the line? Or is it that Hogan always made his mission to always look stronger than his mega powers partner? Hulk loved working with his real-life frenemy because Savage drew money, was good in the ring, and could make Hogan look as good as anybody. And while he's never explicitly come out and said, "I refuse to do a job for Randy," it is telling that it never happened, even when it seemed like the logical, money-drawing thing to do. Number 8. Steve Austin. When Hulk Hogan returned to WWE in February of 2002, most fans assumed he would immediately be set on a course for a collision with Stone Cold Steve Austin. With WrestleMania right around the corner, it seemed absurd that the Rattlesnake and the Hulkster wouldn't lock horns on the grandest stage of them all. As we all know, Hogan ended up stealing the show with The Rock, while Austin got Scott Hall as a consolation prize. As well as a general belief that the match would be a bit of a clash of styles, one issue in getting Hogan versus Austin in the ring was the small matter of who would win and who would lose. According to those in the know, neither man was willing to do the favors for the other. Many years later, Hulk would say, and I quote, "I wish I could have put over Steve Austin." Hogan says a load of old bollocks sometimes, doesn't he? Austin and Hogan teased the match several times in the years that followed Mania 18, but it never ended up happening. It would have been absolute box office if it did, but getting them to agree on a finish would have been a job in and of itself. Number 7. Terry Gordy. This is not so much a case of Hulk Hogan politicking his way out of losing, but more of a unique situation where he, as a contracted WWE star, was being protected on a show that Vince McMahon was co-promoting with other companies. Hogan was scheduled to take on Terry Gordy at the Pro Wrestling Summit on April 13th, 1990. Sharing the bill with the likes of Hogan, new WWE Champion The Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, and other WWE stars were some of the top dogs from All Japan and New Japan. WWE's only demand going in was that both Hogan and Warrior had to win their matches. Gordy, theorizing that he made his living wrestling full-time in the Far East and couldn't afford such a high-profile loss, backed out of the match at the 11th hour. Enter Stan Hansen, a man who had wrestled Hogan when he was still known as Sterling Golden, to save the day and stare at the lights for Vince McMahon's hot dog-skinned Golden Goose. The Lariat had no issue doing a job for Hogan in the televised Tokyo Dome Spectacular, but there was simply no way the reverse would have went down. Number 6. Brock Lesnar. After the initial nostalgia rush of Hogan's 2002 return wore off, Vince McMahon decided the best way to utilize the legend would be for him to help give the rub to the up-and-coming stars of the day. Which is why Hulk teamed up with Edge for a short tag title run, tapped out to Kurt Angle on pay-per-view, and was positively mauled by Brock Lesnar on SmackDown. The destruction job at the hands of the next big thing wrote Hogan off television, but Hulk himself believed he would only be gone until he was ready to come back and avenge his loss. WWE wanted to book the rematch, this time for Brock's undisputed title at Survivor Series. But they had zero designs on Hulk waltzing back into the picture and dethroning Lesnar. On the contrary, they wanted another dominant and decisive victory for the champ. None too thrilled with the prospect of suffering major back-to-back losses, Hogan said, "No thanks, brother," and opted to stay at home a little longer instead. He only came back in early 2003 to reignite his rivalry with The Rock and start a new one with Mr. McMahon. Number 5. Bret Hart. Bret Hart was fine with Hulk Hogan's spotlight-stealing antics at the climax of WrestleMania 9 because he knew in the back of his mind that the new world champion would be giving him the belt back at that year's SummerSlam. At least that's how Vince McMahon had pitched things to the Hitman. Bret was under the assumption that he and Hogan would headline SummerSlam in a rare babyface versus babyface match, which would see him cleanly beat the Hulkster in a true passing the torch moment. Well, absolutely none of that worked for someone, brother, and so Hogan instead dropped the strap to Yokozuna in screwy fashion at King of the Ring. According to Hart, he was furious with Hulk's attitude change, especially after they had supposedly shot a tug-of-war-style magazine cover to promote the mooted match, and chewed Terrible Terry out backstage at the pay-per-view. Bret contends that Hogan told Vince that the excellence of execution wasn't in his league and would never put him over in the middle. Hart continues to hold a grudge about it to this very day. Number 4. Jeff Jarrett. The incident between Hulk Hogan, Jeff Jarrett, and Vince Russo at WCW Bash at the Beach 2000 remains one of the most controversial in wrestling history. Everyone involved has their own story as to why things went down the way they did, but the upshot was Hogan leaving the company and subsequently taking them to court over what transpired. The whole charade, to recap, saw Jarrett lay down for Hogan in their WCW title match, after which Hulk cut a semi-shoot promo deriding the backstage chaos in the promotion at the time, only for Russo to then come out later, which wasn't scheduled, and deliver a scathing character assassination on the Hulkster. This all came about because Hogan wouldn't drop the title to Jarrett as Russo had wanted. Jarrett, who was disgusted by how the whole scenario unfolded, has somewhat tried to defend Hogan in the past, noting that he believes Hulk would have lost to him as asked had he known what it was all leading to down the road. Since Russo didn't know what he was having for dinner that night, let alone what Hogan's creative plans would be moving forward, the champ took his belt and went home, never to return. Number 3, Shawn Michaels. The Hulk Hogan-Shawn Michaels situation is another where the players involved had their own versions and things have become so muddled over time that you end up not exactly sure just what the hell went on. Michaels maintains that the idea was to do a best-of-3 series, with Hulk winning the first match, Shawn the second match, and Hulk the third. Right before their SummerSlam outing, however, Hulk informed WWE that it would now be a one and done and that he would be going over. Naturally. This, the Heartbreak Kid says, is why he went out and oversold much of his opponent's offense and then cut a sarcastic promo on Raw the next night talking about how fast and agile Hogan was in their match. Hulk, for what it's worth, says that he was prepared to have more matches and even put Michaels over, but decided against it after Shawn's mocking promo. In any event, nothing changes the fact that Hulk Hogan, for whatever reason, refused to lay down for Shawn Michaels. After all the times HBK neglected to drop titles and do favors in the 90s, it's hard to feel too much sympathy for him. Number 2, Sting. WCW expertly built the main event of Starrcade 1997 for over a year, to the point where fans were desperate to see Sting finally get his hands on world champion Hulk Hogan. The only conceivable outcome after so much time, effort, and energy spent was for Sting to beat Hogan black and blue, and let's face it, still orange, before either making him tap out to the Scorpion Deathlock or pinning him after a Scorpion Death Drop. According to Eric Bischoff, the Hulkster exercised his right to creative control on the day of the show when he said he wouldn't be putting over the man in the face paint after all. Cue a ton of tension and a mad scramble to come up with something palatable for the paying audience. Hogan eventually relented and said he would lose the match, but then allegedly bribed referee Nick Patrick to deliver a normal 3 count in place of what was supposed to be a fast one, so that it looked like Hulk beat him fair and square. The Icon then got a cheapened win after Bret Hart, who was acting as if a fast count had indeed taken place, restarted the match. An all-time terrible finish and an early nail in WCW's coffin, all because one person didn't want to do business. Number 1, Randy Orton. A year after the Shawn Michaels fiasco, Hulk Hogan was back to once again flip the script and ensure he walked away with a fresh entry in his win column. The Hulkster had been feuding with Randy Orton in what was really a glorified excuse to promote his daughter Brooke's dreadful album. As a full-time member of the roster with some serious upward momentum, you would have put money on the Legend Killer hitting an RKO and pinning the Legend to end their rivalry. And that is perhaps why you should never put money on something that is predetermined, or rather why you shouldn't put money on the outcome of a match where one of the participants has full creative control over their character. Orton, at this stage in his career, didn't have nearly the backstage influence he would wield in later years, and to be fair, was probably on thin ice after serving a 60-day suspension, and he was duly outfoxed by the wily veteran, who scored the clean pin with the usual after a basic 10-minute contest, the last in Hogan's WWE career. Going out by beating a 26-year-old on the second biggest pay-per-view of the year? 4D chess, brother.